Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new session with Code with Sally. Today, the session run every Thursday now at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can watch any missing recordings like you missed in the past on our channel, Code with Sally. You can subscribe so you get notified if we have new videos uploaded after each session. You can check the beginner playlist where we are uploading now all the videos to it. Also, it's work in progress. I'm trying to split them into topics so it's easier for you to get to focus on loops, if statements, if you prefer it that way. But all the videos are uploaded to the beginner playlist. So you can go through it and check the videos in order, oldest to newest. Today, we'll continue a topic that we started already. So if you missed what we discussed before, I encourage you to go to the previous sessions for the same topic at least, so you can see what we discussed before and keep like the learning and know the basics, and then progress to where we are now. So the topic that we are continuing today is Apex unit test, and we discussed why it's very important. We stressed that asserts are essential and why Apex testing serve a very good resource or way to do QA and validate for extreme cases, edge cases, negative and positive. And today, what we want to do is to continue to what we discussed before in the previous session. So part of what we discussed already, we discussed that we need to prepare our own data, and we don't want to rely on some people make like use of the current data in the org and use it for their testing cases. And that's not recommended at all, simply because maybe a record or an account that is in dev or QA won't be there in production. And you don't want to be relying on existing data because that's a huge risk that it may fail at any time. So what we started with last time was that we tried the first method where we were creating the data in the test class itself. So a quick like refresher. This is where we ended last session. We discussed that we have a contact trigger. We discussed that we have a contact trigger handler, and then we were discussing how we want to do the test scenarios for it. And that's what we ended with last time. So we saw that we have the first test class or test method. We were preparing the data, and we created an account and a contact. And then what we had again in the third method, we repeated the same code again. The account and contact were created. So that's where like we want to say like this is the problem that we have. So that's what we started with last time. Like we created the test data inside of the test methods. So if we want to say now, like what's the problem with that? I kind of highlighted the problem by telling you that we have the same account creation and contact creation repeated between the first and the third methods. So someone will say, what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that in our example here, it's very simple. We are creating an account, giving just the name, then the contact, we are assigning the account ID and creating the contact. But in real life scenarios, you may have a lot of data to create. Like you may need to create a code, you may need to create an account, different accounts to use in the code, the order, the products. You may need to create the structure to mimic what you have in the scenario you'll be working with. And that means if you want to repeat that over and over again in different methods, that repetition means it's more work for you, more like time consuming. If I come and say, okay, I will add a new required field for the products and new required fields for the code. So imagine if you have like 10 testing methods, you have to go and change the 10 methods and update the required fields and insert them again in each test method data creation. And that's something you will always hear me saying, like, if you have repeated code, that's a big no. And it's something that you have to stop and think about it, because we don't want to have repeated code over and over again, because the maintenance will take more time. And let's assume you forgot to maintain it or to update the code. If you run your test methods, some of them will pass, some of them will fail, because the ones that you updated are passing. The ones that are failing, that you didn't update, will fail because it's required fields. So that's what will take us to the next recommended way to do it. If you have repeated data setup you need to do for different test methods in your code. And that's what we want to discuss today or now. It's the test setup and how the test setup work and how that will help us avoid duplication. So the test setup, before the example we discussed last time for the contact and contact trigger, will be the same code that we'll use to cover like the test setup and the test data factory. But before using this in the test scenario we want to learn how to write it and what's the benefit of it or how to execute it. So let me open first a class that I prepared on the side for you to check. Let me open it. Okay, yeah, I have it here. Contact test setup. And what we need to do now is we need to use a annotation called test setup before the method that we want to use to create the data. So we have a test setup annotation here, and then we have a static method to create the data, and you can name it any name you want. And to learn how it works, that's what we want to understand, because it's very interesting and it's very useful at the same time. So the definition of test setup, it's an annotation that helps you create reusable or repeated data that you can use along all your test methods. When the test class has a test method, test setup method, it will run it the first method. Once you hit the run for the test class, this method will run first, and it runs only once, and it creates data for you. And you cannot have more than one test setup method. If you try to, let's say here, if I try to create another one and try to save it, and try to save here, I will get in the problems. Only one method per type can be defined with test setup. So you are only allowed one test setup method for your test class. The main thing that we want to know how it works, and that's where it's very interesting. What happens is when you have a test class with a test setup, that's the first method that will run. So if we assume this is a test class that I have test method 1, I have test method 2, and I have the test setup. So what will happen that the code, when it runs, it will come and say, okay, do you have in your test class any test setup? The answer here is yes. So this method will be executed first. So that means I will create an account, and I will create a contact assigned to this account, and I will insert them. That will happen the first step of your test class. Then this data will be available for your test methods. So for example, here I have test method 1, and I will select a contact that, because my test class doesn't have access to the org data. When I will select limiting 1, the contact that I just created in the test setup is the one that will come back to me. So I will get it. Here I'm double checking that the assert it's the same contact, and then I will update this contact email. I updated the contact, and then I'm selecting again the same contact to double check that the contact email got updated. And finally, I'm deleting the contact. This is just to simulate for you how the test setup work. I'm not actually testing anything because, again, when we do test methods, we do asserts and we do our checks. But here, I just want to demonstrate for you how the test setup work. So any test data changes, like here, for example, I got the contact that I created in the test setup, but I updated the contact email. I deleted the contact. Like I did changes to this record. Those changes will be rolled back once the test method is done. That means by the end of this line, where the method test method 1 is done, these changes that I did to the contact will be rolled back. That means I can still, in another method, get the same contact with the original email, and it's not deleted from the org for the test class. So that's how it will work. And that means each test method will get a fresh version of these test data. So that's something I wanted to highlight. That means like if the test method will run after, because the code will be executed from top to bottom, if I try to select the contact again, I will get it. I get the contact, and if I check the email, I will have the original email that I created the contact with. So that's the benefit of the test setup. It's not only creating like reusable data, like it's not just creating an account and a contact. It works in a way that it runs first, so it creates you the data that you may need in multiple test methods. And regardless what changes you do with these data in one of the method or each of them, these changes will be rolled back. So you know 100% that every test method, when it will access the data again, it will access the data as fresh version as it was inserted at the beginning. So I added these debug statements so you can see it. So here I just have a debug statement to show you that the first method that will be executed will be the test setup. And then the test method will be the second method that will be executed. And we updated and deleted. Like in other words, if I did that here and try to select the contact again, this will give me an error because I deleted the contact already and I don't have any. But now, after that, the test method 2 will run, and I will find that I got the email. When I do the assert, it won't fail because it will do the assert that the original email is there, and it will succeed. So let's see the debug statement together so you can see it in action. Okay, yeah, this one, and I will run it. And I will open the debug, the logs here, and I will open the last log to show it to you. So here you will see that the first one was the test setup. Second one is test method 1, and test method 2 was the second one to run. And that means the test method 1 went, updated the email, deleted the contact, but even though when the test method ran, the assert succeeded, it didn't fail because here I have the assert checking the original email. And you will find here the test run was successful for 1 and 2. So that's the benefit of the test method. In other scenario, I could have this repeated in test method 1 and then again in test method 2. But I don't want to keep repeating the code over and over again. I want to do it once and reuse it. And again, the benefit of that, you may not feel it or sense it now because we are just creating a simple account or contact, but it will be very, very useful when you have in real life project a hierarchy that you are creating like between accounts, contacts, products, price book, quotes, orders, and you have a long list of preparation to do, and you may need it in multiple methods. So you don't want to keep doing it over and over again, and you don't need to worry about what will happen to this data within a test method because the test methods will roll back those changes, and every test method will get a fresh copy, as you saw, of this data. So any questions? I'll pause here and ask, like, anyone has a question?
Yeah. Do you know what happens if you create a test user data since that doesn't can't be deleted? Does it still roll back like it was never committed in the first place and just used for the test, or does it
You
not
mean
work?
here? This one?
Yeah, if you create users, you can't delete them. So how do you roll them back? So in the past, without having the code, I would do the other ways of creating data where you data load some test data, use it, and you'd have to delete it yourself after. But we couldn't delete user data, so we'd have to like run some anonymous Apex to rename all the users. And then we just had all these users piled up in the org. But it sounds like if we could do this with users, that would
I
be
I
awesome. It just
I believe you should be, because like in my test scenarios, even when I run it, there is another layer that I don't think we'll discuss in this session, but sometimes, for example, you want to have like the controller of LWC or Visual Force page, you want to run it as specific profile. So I may need to run it as, for example, um, manager. In another case, I may need to run it as sales user. And I am an admin. So if I run the test classes now, it's running as I am the one who's running the code or executing the controller or the LWC. And I had a lot of scenarios in like the work experience where we create our users, specific users with specific profiles, and we can specify in the test method that we want to run this portion of the testing as a specific user. So we used to create different users, run it as a specific users to mimic that we are running different profiles to make sure, for example, you're not missing permissions or you didn't forget to include in your deployment the permission for a new field for a specific profile, or you're not getting more data than you should get. Test run as Apex. And here you will have it. Like I didn't have it in the scenario, like to run it, but here this is, for example, we are creating a user, we are getting the standard profile, and we are creating here, this is a unique username. We are creating a user, and then you are running as this user. Here again, and I believe in my case as well, like here, it's not inserting, but as far as I remember, and I can take it offline and try, but I had in the past used, like created a user for the test method. And I believe I even inserted that because I needed to use it in multiple scenarios. Like I had test method 1 and 2, and I needed the same user. So I inserted and just selected and get it back. But that's one scenario where we used to create users, and that's why I believe it will roll back, but I can test it offline, Ryan, and get back to you.
Yeah, I bet it will too. Thank you. That's amazing because like it saved me some grief in the past if I had done
Yep.
stuff using proper Apex tests instead of my kludgy admin way of doing stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm loving this. Thank
especially
you so much, though.
you may have, like, if you rely on the users, again, it's the same thing. Like, if you rely on the users you have, like, you want an active user, specific profile. What if you are moving to a new org production and you don't have your profiles or users yet set up, and it may fail. So we try usually not to rely on existing records, neither like users or data, and we create our own. But here the main benefit, as you saw, like the test setup as well help you, not just that you're creating a data, but you're not repeating the creation. Like you're not doing it over and over again in each method. You have it once, and it will make sure that you have this fresh copy or these users with this like or this contact or this account with this format or this data the same will go for each method because after each method, it will roll back. So that's the benefit or the usage of the test set. Now that we saw like how to do it or how to use it, we want to see how we'll benefit. That was just like a random test simply to show you the order of execution and how the test method will run after. And even though we changed the email, we deleted the contact, the assert succeeded. So we want to see how we can do that in the contact, for example, trigger we have. So to do that, again, what we need to do is start with the test setup annotation. Setup, okay. And then we'll start by having a static void, and we can give it any name we want, maybe setup test data. It doesn't matter the name, but again, it's like I wouldn't name it test method 1, test method 2. We choose a name that is good or makes sense. So what I will do is that I can take here the account insert that we had here, and I can move it to my test setup now. And the other part that we kept repeating was creating the contact, for example. So I can take here the contact insertion and have it here. So what we did is create the contact, created the account, sorry, at first, and then inserted this account. We created the contact and we link it to it. And that's all what we did here. Now, how to modify the test class that we have? I will go here. Okay, here we created account and contact. So I don't need to create them anymore. This one, I will keep it. This one is a special case that will keep it. And the reason why is because I have here, I want to create it with a missing first name. So here what we created, this contact has a first name. Here we wanted to have it without the first name to test that we will get an exception. So in that case, or this specific scenario, even like you don't like, you may keep the account. Like I can remove the account because we have the account, and I can say here account, and I will say select ID from account. So again, if I have like specific record type I want to create the account with, I have any specific setup required fields for the account, I can go and update it here. I don't need to create it. I'm just querying the account that I got created, and I'm trying to create another contact which is missing a first name. Here, I don't need this example, like it doesn't have an account, but like usually we give it. So again, I can remove. I will see here, okay, this one has a first name and last name and email. I can take the email and just update the contact that I have here to have the email as well, because it doesn't harm to have it. So it's an extra data that we need for one case, but it doesn't harm to have it for all. And then I will like delete the contact creation, or instead of doing that, like I would say, okay, I want to select ID and email from contact, limit 1, and that will get me the contact that we created. So it will try to set the email to null, and again, we are testing that it will fail. I'll go to the third. The third has like first name, last name, account. The email won't harm to have it as an extra, and account. So in that case, I can just remove both. I don't need both because it will be created, and then I'll check that it should be updated by now because the contact got created and account. So let's save it. Okay, there is a problem. Variable does not exist. ACC line 44. Okay, so here I can say here limit 1. Instead of using the account ID, I know that that account got created. I'm just getting it. And now let's run this test together. So it's contact trigger test. and I will run it, and we'll check the test tab here, and it shows that everything got executed correctly. So what we did didn't impact anything. But all what we did here, that this method, we needed an account. We used the one that got created here. We are just trying to create an invalid contact. So I cannot use the one that we created because the one we created is valid. So we created that. But again, for the rest, this one, we use the contact that we have. This, we check the contact that we have. So that saved me from creating account and contact over and over again. And if in the future you come with new changes in your org, tells you like I created 3 required fields in the account. Now you will go and update here, add the 3 required fields here only. So you don't have to go through method by method and add this required field. It's just one. For the test setup, you go and update it, and it will impact all the test methods. So it makes your code easier to maintain and not harder to add or update it in if needed for any scenarios or any use cases. And why to use it? It makes your code more efficient because you have your logic of creating the data is not duplicated. It's one place. It's consistent because you have all the data standard, like you created, you control it. It's the same for all the test method unless you need specific versions. It's easier to maintain, as we said, like if you want to update required fields or something, you go to one spot, add the required, and it will impact all the other. And it's great, like here now, my focus in the test method is testing like the logic that we want to test. And I'm not worrying about like the data creation itself. Like I have it separate in the test setup and I know it's there, it's getting created for me. So let's move to the next. Like what we did so far is better than what we did last time, because last time we had it, the data created over and over in each method. Now we took it one step further and we created the test setup. But I still see a problem. If I have here, I need a count and a contact to be created for this trigger. I may have another LWC and another Visual Force page. I may have 10 other classes that need an account and contact to be inserted and created. So that means the code that I'm having in the test setup may be in other 10 test classes to create accounts and contacts. And once I say like we will repeat it 10 times, that's a red flag. Because again, if I need to add required fields, that means I need to open the 10 test classes that I have and that they are inserting accounts and contacts to add the required fields. So that's a problem, and it's a repetition of code, and it can cause issues on the long run because you may forget to update some of the test classes. It can fail if it's required field and so on. So that's the third way or the third scenario that we want to discuss, and that's using Test Data Factory for reusability. What is Test Data Factory in Apex? So the definition of it, it's a dedicated class where you'll be creating all its purpose in life is creating test data, like inserting accounts, inserting contacts, inserting codes, products, price books. It's just the purpose of it. It's not, doesn't have any asserts. It doesn't run any data methods or logic you have in your classes. All the purpose it's doing is just creating data. It's designed to centralize all the testing data creation. So you can have it like if I have a method to create an account in a test data factory, that means if I have a contact trigger test, I can call it. Then if I have a welcome test and another one for LWC controller test, I can call the same method in the test data factory. So at the end, instead of updating these 10 test classes, if I need to add required field, I will go just for this test data factory to update if I have changes like as required fields to be added. So we have to mark it as is test. So it's not included in the call coverage, and I don't need to write test class for it. The benefit of it, it's consistency. We have decentralized, like we saw, the test setup is consistency within the test class, one test class, but I will repeat it among others. This one make it more consistent that it's like a utility class. When we created math utility, we created another utility. It's a centralized method that can be called by other classes, and it's easier to maintain. Again, we took a step now that it's in the test setup, so I don't have to update 3 test methods, but I have to update 10 test classes. Now we remove it to test data factory. So if you have an update in the account, you do it in test data factory and it will reflect all the test classes for you. And it's more efficient to do it that way. And it's easier for you to code. So what we'll do now is we'll create a test data factory. I have it ready for you. I will take you through it and we'll update our code in the test, the test class we have for the trigger and see how we can use it. So let's go here together. I have here the test data factory. So if you remember when we talked and worked with utility methods, utility classes, it was regular classes and it has like static methods. So this one is exactly the same. The only difference between it and between utility classes that we started with is test to tell Salesforce, don't worry about this one. It's not real methods and classes. It's not used anywhere. It's just used in the test classes. So we don't need to do code coverage and testing for it. And all it does, the same as any utility class, we have inside the class static methods. So we have one static method that you call to create an account, and it will insert this account and return it for you. You have another one that create a contact for you. And in that case, because I want to link the contact, it takes account ID. And for example, here we said, okay, maybe sometimes I want to create the contact but not insert it. So I will pass a Boolean. That's something like you can come with different like overloads and different usage that you may need to do. And for example, if you want to have always a test, you don't want to pass insert record or not, and your expectation is always to create it. Maybe you don't do this at all and you remove this, or you can have another overload. We saw the overload before together. It can be like that. Here, I can remove this. So it's another overload because different parameters. And I can call this one. So I can call this one and pass the account ID that I passed here. And I pass the Boolean with true. And I will return it because this one returned a contact. So you can work with different overloads. You can do different scenarios. Like here, I created another one that maybe in the future you want to create not just one contact, you want to create multiple contacts. So it takes the account ID and how many contacts you want to create. And we use the traditional for loop, and we created the contacts. We appended the I to have different first and last name and email, and we attached to the account, and then we inserted this list of contact and returned them. So you can, again, think about this. You're creating a utility method that creates data for you, but you are adding here the creator or like the is test at the top to mark it that it's not real like methods and classes that are used, and we don't need to worry about testing them. Okay, so now we created that. Let's go to the test we have. So what do we need to change? Like here, I have one that creates an account, and I have here this one. So what I would do, instead of having test setup here creating an account for me, I can do test data factory dot and I go get the create test account. And that's where my contact will be created. Here, let's remove those. And this one, return an account. So we will return the account here. So I put here this account equal and the test data factory. And I remove my data here. Second, I have here the insert and that I want to create the contact. So I will do here test data factory and I will go check my test data factory. I have one that takes the account ID and one account ID and insert or not. In my case, I want it to be inserted, so I can call that directly and pass here acc.id. And I can remove those. So now my test class, I have the test setup. Like the test data factory, again, you can use it in test setup, or you can decide to use it inside the test methods. Again, if you have different scenarios and data is not the same along most of the test methods, you don't use the test setup. And in that case, you'll use it individually, test data factory within the test methods, wherever you need, like one that will create multiple contacts, can be called here. Another one to create an account only can be here. It depends on the scenario. But let's assume, as we have here in our scenario, we want to create for most of the test methods, we want to create an account and a contact. So I can use the test data factory as well in the test set. And that will make sure, again, that we have a fresh copy for each test method of this account and this contact. But that saves me the hassle of if I need to add required fields in the future, I will go and add it in test data factory only, and it will be reflected for all the test classes because we are using the test data factory. So I don't need to worry about opening contact, trigger test, and the other 9 test classes that I have to update each test setup or each account creation to include the required fields. So I have it more centralized, and I make sure it's only one spot where I need to go and test. So that's how, for example, our testing class will progress if we use the test factory with the test setup and all the methods that we have in the test data factory. Again, here I am just running the test. It passed, no issues. All the methods passed because we are not doing something like different. We just moved where we are creating the data to the data factory and calling it from the test setup instead of each single method. So it's simply a utility class with different methods with the annotation is test, so we don't need to write code coverage for it. The next topic is bulk testing. Bulk testing is very important. Why do we need it? When we were discussing triggers together, we kept saying the triggers needs to bulkified, the triggers needs to bulkified, but sometimes people don't get it why we need it actually bulkified. We need it bulkified because sometimes you can load, for example, we need to load hundreds of records, for example, with the data loader, or we need to load, you have like even execute anonymous. You are creating a list of accounts and inserting them together. So you may have hundreds and thousands of records coming together, and you need to make sure that your trigger is bulkified. And sometimes people don't write triggers in the right way, and sometimes they pass with testing of creation of one account. But when we go to real org, production org, and write and like run real examples, they fail because of the limitations we have with Salesforce. So what we'll do now, we'll write on purpose a bad practice trigger with SOCL inside a SOCL and DML inside loop. And we do that on purpose. We never do that, and you never think it's doable or we can do it. But I want to do this because I want to show you that without the bulkification in testing, because again, when you are testing, you're creating an account contact, you're creating a single record, and the unit test classes helps you testing bulk easier. So I will show you how without bulk testing, this bad practice will pass and no issues will be discovered. And then I want to show you that how with the test classes and the bulkification it will fail, and how when we do it in like good practice and use collections and don't do inside for loops, how it will pass with the bulk test. So that's what we want to try now, like see how we will fail testing, or how with no bulkification will pass the bad practice, and how the bulkification in testing will help us catch such issues, and how when we fix it, the bulkification will run with no issues at all. So let me go here, and I will go to contact trigger and create method. Okay, so I will add this here. I will comment it, or let me keep it, and I will add another method that has the problem. So here we are using sets to get the account IDs. We are not doing XML or like a query inside a loop. We are here updating them in bulk. We are not updating one by one. That's what we always need to do. But I will try here another method that it's not good practice. Here it's with issue. So I'm saying the name, it's with issue. And we are saying here, I will loop through the contacts one by one that we don't have an account, that does have an account. I will perform a DML in SOCO for each. I will get account by account and then update the contact date for it. And I will update the date or update the account one by one. And that's, again, a bad practice. Don't do it. It's just to simulate that we can pass it with no, like, without failing the test class. So here, I will save this one. Now, what we are doing, I will update here. This one is using the good method. I will replace it with the bad method. And here I will replace it as well, and I will save the contract, the contact trigger handler. And again, I will run here the same trigger test, and let's see it together. Even though it's a bad practice and we are not supposed to do it, it passed. The test classes passed and no issues. So we didn't discover that we have a problem in our test because the test passed and we don't have any bulk testing. Let's add a method that will test for bulk specifically. So to do that, I will add here code for you. So we have the test annotation is test. Then I name it test bulk insert. And I created here, I'm using the test, the account that we created. So that's why I'm getting only one. And in the start test and stop test, I'm creating multiple contacts. So I used the test data factory. You remember we had a version here that creates multiple contacts. It takes the account and how many. So here I'm telling it, okay, I want to create 150 contacts related to this contact, to this account. And I will run now the test class again. This one, and I will see if it will pass. Like without the bulk testing, everything passed, and that gave me confidence that my trigger is good. But now with the bulk, you'll see that there is a failure. And here I will open test bulk. It says you have too many SOCO queries. We hit the limit, a governor limit for Salesforce. So that tells me, okay, something is bad in my trigger that it's not supposed to do it. So I will try, instead of using the one with the issue, I will put it back to the one that we have as good practice, like the one with no issues. here and here. I put it back and I will comment the one with issues. The bad practice to have a DML or SOCO inside a for loop. So I will save my trigger now and I will go. I won't change anything. I will have still the bulk test and I will run it. And contact trigger test. And I will run here my test bulk. Everything, including the bulk test. And here, as you can see, it passed, no issues. Even the test bulk now succeeded. So it's just an example of how critical your test classes are. Because again, if you have it, maybe during testing, the QA won't try to stress test your account or contact trigger. And they may be testing the scenarios with 1, 2 contacts. Even if they write like in developer console to insert multiple, they may do a list of 10 contacts to be inserted together, but they will not go, maybe they will miss having the bulk testing and very large number to be tested together. And that's why having such scenarios and thinking of testing even the bulk in your test classes is essential. So it gives you the chance like to discover an issue. And as you saw, without this test, our trigger, even with the best practice passed, no issues. But when we inserted the bulk in the scenario where we had like 150 accounts, contacts inserted together, it failed. And that made me, okay, realize there is something. I know for sure there is code review usually, and people review each other code. And the bad practice we had, someone will catch it. But again, this help you even as a developer to catch this issue yourself before even going to the code review, which is better and it's good. And it always make things better quality for everyone and easier to maintain. Okay, so let's pause then for today. The other thing I would give it to you, maybe think about it if you want. What we want to do like as a homework, we have like this scenario. I want you to think about it. Like, I want you to think that you will create a custom object called task and create these fields and write this trigger and try to write like a test class for it as well. Next time will be the last session we have about test classes. I hope it was useful. Again, test classes is a very important topic, and some people like don't take the time to learn more about it or understand how it's working, but it's very essential. And I hope like with these scenarios and these examples, I make it more clear how each scenario or how each test you can add help you discover a new error that you may face or have in your code and you're not aware of. So it's an automated kind of like automated test that will run over and over again for you. So the more you give it like attention and write it in a proper way, it will help you get and produce better code quality. Next time we'll have the start and stop test. We'll have the positive and negative and a summary about like the key takeaways we have, and we'll answer any questions you have about exception, like about testing, triggers, anything we covered from the beginning of the course until this moment. I think we'll have some time by the end of the next session to go through any questions or any topics that maybe you want me to go through it again and explain it. So if you have in any sessions specific questions, please try to send it to me before the session, and I will do my best like to collect them and cover them at the end of the next session, because I don't want to mix the session and start another topic next time. So we'll take it as a good like pausing point, and we'll cover any questions or scenarios you want to talk about next time at the end of the session. And maybe Ryan, I can add another example for the runAs user and create a user and run a test class as different users to go through it together as well if you want.
Yeah, thanks. The whole runAs thing was pretty neat. It was the whole fact that you can't delete a user once you create it. And I wasn't thinking, so it was kind of the whole under the hood is it never actually created. It's just created for the test and then rolled back like it never was. So it's really cool. It looks like that's the case. So thank you.
Um, okay. Thank you so much for everyone who attended the session or for anyone who's watching the session online. We'll continue and finish this topic next week, next Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you have any questions from now until next session, or if you have any topics you wish to like revisit, review, have more example about at the end of the session next time, please ping me and I will prepare it and include it in the slides to have it ready for you for next session. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and joining, and I will see you next Thursday.